Hi, I'm Leslie Mueller. Welcome to Art and Style. Today we're going to be visiting the Stamford Loft Artists Association. It's a great building in Stamford on Canal Street where artists can gather, have their own studios, and critique each other's work, see what makes other artists click, and just a great place for creativity. We're going to visit the studio of Paul Larsen, a talented oil painter who is just at the beginning of doing a huge painting. So we're going to look over his shoulder and watch the creative process for the next few months. Come on and join me. I'm anxious for you to see Paul's studio. So here we are in Paul Larsen's wonderful studio. I know you're going to love hearing about his journey that we are about to embark on for a huge piece that he's doing. So Paul, thanks so much for coming in today, letting us come in today and see your great space.
Pleasure, thanks for coming.
Did you feel art was the direction you wanted to go in when you were a child, or was this something that
I always knew I was an artist. I always knew that I was an artist, and I had a fascination for making pictures for as far back as I could remember, probably before I could walk. At least that's the way the story goes in the family.
Well, it's interesting though, because you probably, were drawing like everybody was, 5, 6, 7 years old, and then sports come in, and then school comes in, and a lot of children just drop out of art.
I had other
Somehow
activities. There were other things I was interested in along the way. Music, the social scene and everything. That was important to me as it was to anybody else. But I always knew that I was going to be an artist.
Well, and the visual world must have been important to you, images.
Absolutely.
Yeah, versus words or versus other.
Always drawing, doodling, always. I always had a sketchbook. I collected for years everything that I did, and it's all been lost. I don't know where it went, but some of it remains.
Well, it could be though. It's interesting because I wonder if you had kept those doodles. I wonder if any of those shapes. Some people really feel that there are certain shapes that are in my hard edges, circles, and their doodles end up coming out in their arts.
Actually,
they're abstract artists.
Earlier in my career, I would do a lot of thumbnail sketches. And I'd throw them in a box, or put them in a 3-ring binder, or somehow try to organize them. It got out of hand anyway. But sometimes I'll go back and look at some of those things and say, well, this is an interesting design. I could make a painting out of this basic design. Or there'll be paintings that I did far earlier and say, I'd like to redo this composition in a way that I paint now.
So those become inspirational pieces?
Yeah, I'll start to copy my own things, my own composition. Say, I like the composition, I want to redo it and do it in a different way.
So Paul, you're a 14-year-old now, and you have known that you wanted to be an artist as long as you can remember. But now you have to start thinking, or you're 15, 16, you have to start thinking, okay, what am I going to do for schooling? Am I going to go to art school? Do I go to liberal arts? When did you start feeling a shift in thinking, okay, career?
Well, even though I always considered myself an artist and always wanted to find a career in the visual arts, I did have a high school teacher who I respected very much. And one day she gave a lecture to us all about, if those of you who are planning to go to art school, School of Visual Arts or Parsons, be prepared to eat, drink, think, sleep art for the rest of your life. And that kind of scared me.
Gee.
I did apply to some art schools, including School of Visual Arts, Parsons, RISD. I decided to go to liberal arts college instead, just so that I'd have a more rounded perspective of the world.
Yeah.
When I got to college, though, my art advisor, Chick Peterson, I just fell in love with art history. And then I became inspired, and I said, you know what, I want to be a painter. And my parents weren't too happy when I informed them of that. And I did go into business for 25 years to make ends meet.
I think a lot of artists do that, but even the professions that they choose can end up being very artistic. maybe commercially artistic, and I don't know that that's
I
necessarily
think if
such a
you're,
bad thing.
I think if you're a creative person, even in business, I think you think creatively. You look for
Absolutely.
solutions to challenges.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that there's any problem with having an art background. It's a way of thinking.
And then there's music, and I know music is a big part of your life. You come in here, you turn on music, you've got this great guitar collection, you obviously play. Do you find that there is a connection between the music and your strokes or their pattern? There seems to be a rhythm in what you paint in each piece. Does that have anything to do with your musical loves?
I love music, and music has inspired me my whole life. And it finds its way into my painting. I don't know exactly how, but I think that there's more of a rhythm and a dialogue that's created in the work that springs from an appreciation of the music, a mood that's created, or a rhythm that's created. Maybe I found myself at times
Rocking out?
brush stroking to the beat of the music.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I
So,
believe
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So you talk about rhythm and beats, and then you're in the design business of wallpaper, which is pattern and a rhythm, so to speak. Did you find that that all connected too?
Sure. It all connects. It all interconnects. The wallpaper business, I was introduced to it. I never thought I would get into wallpaper design or textile design. It's a huge field, but I had never given it a thought in school as to a career. After I graduated, I actually was invited by someone who had seen my work to come and try my hand at it. And since I didn't have a job, I said, sure,
Yeah.
I'll try it. And it was fascinating. I didn't think I worked at this job for 10 years and ended up putting collections together, but I was never in love with the industry. I learned a lot, but I was not really interested in wallpaper design as a career.
But perhaps this whole collection concept that you talked about having to do, and the fact that you say you're not working on one piece at a time, that there's 12, maybe it is a collection, maybe that whole collection.
That's
There's a lot of
absolutely
talented artists
true.
in the commercial world.
That's
yeah.
absolutely true, and this is the result of having been challenged in that industry to have to come up with maybe a dozen different wallpapers that would go into a collection.
Yeah, cohesive.
That would be
yeah.
cohesive. And so now, if for instance I'm painting for a show, or even if I don't have a show specifically scheduled, I'll still think in terms of, I'm going to do 10 paintings. I've got 10 canvases that I want to fill up now, and I want them to be cohesive. I want them to be a complete body of work that all work together.
One song, it gets back to that too.
Yeah, they can be tied together in different ways. It could be stylistically, or by subject matter, or by color. But
Even size.
even size. Well, I like to paint big now, and even though I'm painting smaller for certain applications, I end up painting on smaller canvases, in this case 2 foot by 2 foot, but they end up being a 6 by 8 foot painting.
Put them all together.
Exactly.
Well, and especially if you're looking at something, you talked about finding a style, which so many of us, spend a career looking for what feels comfortable. And when you finally hit something that does feel comfortable, it's like, wow, I spent all this time trying to figure out where I fit in. Did those journals then, and all those boxes of papers and all those sketches, feel like it was part of, you wouldn't be here if you hadn't had those?
Yes. When you go back and look at all the stuff that came before, you could see a pattern emerging.
Even as a young,
We
even as a teenager,
develop a language that we don't know that we're learning.
Visual language, yeah. Most artists I know end up working in the basement or on a desk when they're high schoolers, and then they're in college, and again, you're working in kind of a studio environment when you're at school. And then you get out and you're working in an office or a studio. Perhaps you get married, now you're back in a bedroom somewhere. You're in this fabulous loft space here. What was was it inspiring, which I would assume having many other artists around, does that help you? And do you like having a space away from your residence to paint in?
I love having a space dedicated to art, number
Yeah.
one. I like having it away from my residence too, because it's someplace that I can go without being distracted
It's separate,
with other
yeah.
activity. I happen to be in a building with 25 other artists, which I find very inspiring to be around other creative people. The space itself is a sanctuary. It's a place to do the art, to do the exploratory work in painting, and the surroundings are very important to developing the mindset to work.
So
and
when you
create.
walk through the door, or you even get in your car and you know you're coming over here, you walk through the door to this great studio, you're working, right? You're in a different headset.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
mindset,
here
yeah.
for. Yeah.
So you're probably producing more art as a result too, right?
Yeah, I've become pretty prolific now.
Yeah, that's great. So have you seen the style evolve more quickly because you are in a space that's dedicated just to painting?
Definitely, definitely. My style did not evolve quickly at all in the years that I was doing very little art.
Yeah.
The art that I was doing in those years, everyone was going to be a masterpiece in my mind. So it was very
The pressure's
deliberate,
on, yeah.
very deliberate, but the evolution of the style was very slow. Now that I have the studio for the past 3 years, since I've been painting every day, the style has evolved very quickly.
That people think that an artist comes into their studio in the middle of the night and paints a complete masterpiece and that's it. I think it's more about discipline than people realize, and I think that it is a matter of looking at the canvas and solving problems, and that it is a very focused, disciplined business, more so than people realize.
It's very disciplined, yeah. It's entirely about problem solving.
Yeah.
Entirely. And a lot of it, I have to say, takes a lot of courage, because
You're stepping out there.
you're stepping out there, you're producing something, you're making a mark that you can't go back on necessarily. Or you're embarking down a road that you don't know
May not be successful.
where it's
Yeah.
leading.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, so that first stroke, when I was talking to you about, it does take,
But there is a confidence, I think, that you get inevitably, I think maybe not inevitably, but in the end, where if you're going on a long walk, you know you're going to end up someplace, but you don't know where it is, and the walk
And what
is
the
the
path will be.
It's not exactly the destination that's the most interesting thing, is the actual experience of getting there. So that, I think, is really what drives me now. It's fascinating to figure out, see what the end result is, but much more important is the process.
yeah. Well, I'm so anxious to start this journey with you. I know that you've got the canvas ready and a couple strokes on it already, and we'll be really looking forward to seeing how this all evolves. I hope we don't make you nervous.
No, it'll be an adventure for us.
It will be an adventure. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, so Paul, here we are. You've been doing some work since I was gone.
Yep.
I see a lot of nitty-gritty coming out. Now you're really getting into these optical illusions that you love. Are you driving yourself crazy yet?
No, it continues to fascinate me because, as I said, before, it's an adventure. So I don't know where it's leading, but every once in a while, something will come clear to me as I'm working, and then I'll say, well, I like that. For instance, this area right here, I'm not going to mess around with that too much at all. I really like the way that's worked out. Unfortunately, because this is so high up here, I don't get to work on it too often.
Yeah, right.
But I'm hoping that I get some nice things like that going on up there too.
So basically, now you're looking at it, and it's getting to the point where there are sections of the piece that are working, that you're not going to touch.
Right.
theoretically you go around the piece, you keep stepping back and going closer until there's no area that you feel you want to work on more.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, tell me about what's going on here. I'm loving this area where you feel like your eye is coming
Well,
in.
This line right here is, I turned it into a horizon line, actually.
Yeah, you can see that.
So you see these lines are leading into the distance where the perspective
Right.
would be here. Your vanishing point would be about here. Now, I'm going just the opposite here, so this turns into like a horizon line, this being the sky, this being the ground.
And then it kind of disappears as you go behind the figure.
Right, because it's really not supposed to be a horizon line, it's just that impression in that area. The larger picture is this is a staircase.
Oh, okay.
So you have your treads and your risers. But this one ends up, this riser comes down to be a horizon line.
Well,
So
I love the way your eye, your
right.
eye thinks it's a certain thing, and then you get to another area, and it's not quite what
Something
you
else,
thought.
exactly.
But over here, you definitely have indicated that those are stairs.
That's right. I did that partly for composition reasons and partly in order to clarify it for the viewer a little bit more. Over here. So I can go all the way across, or I can just shade it across like that. Now, this color from underneath still shows through.
Yeah.
Because this is not completely opaque either.
Yeah, there's a little, and that is paint and
Medium.
medium.
Yeah. So in the end, you get unexpected effects.
Right.
You kind of expect it.
Well, you kind of,
You don't
I mean, you do it enough. I've done it in gouache,
Mhm.
and it's kind of similar where you're putting the medium in it and you see through, but you don't always necessarily know exactly what you're going to see through.
No,
Sometimes
that's
it's
it.
a nice surprise.
The real interesting thing is you could look at a photograph of this, and it might be a nice image, but you will never get
Yeah.
the experience of seeing the real thing because
No.
it's really translucent.
And it won't photograph, it won't look
No.
good on the website, it's gonna look different, it's gonna look different everywhere. But I can see little areas here where you've done it, like here and here. But what I actually like having that little residue there, it's just giving it a
That's
little
on purpose.
punch. Yeah,
That's done on purpose. You don't want to ruin that
it's
kind
your
of stuff.
twig. Yeah, and here too, I can see it. Oh, here's a perfect example. Here you've done it, you've stumbled, but that's coming through.
Right.
And if that wasn't coming through, it would be a much duller area.
Even areas like this, which look, one person might say, oh, how rough that was.
Right.
But that's actually, to my eye, I like that.
There's a lot going on in there, yeah. But again, 10 feet back, you're not gonna see
You
that.
won't see it,
Yeah.
but it'll contribute to the overall impression.
No, I agree. Well, it gives it energy. I think it actually almost gives it kind of a little bit of a laciness. There's
Exactly.
something kind of lacy or
There's something
veily
very
about it.
exact. It's
Yeah.
something very ephemeral, and that's
Yeah.
one of the things that are philosophical about my paintings. I'm trying to discover reality, really.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's
You're not
presenting-
hiding it.
It's presenting itself to me. So all the lines that were there in the beginning of the painting
Mhm.
begin to become more and more obscured. They
Mhm.
never disappear completely.
Right, they're always
So
there.
they're in the background.
Well, they're not
Layer
shouting
by
at you
layer.
anymore, but some are.
Some,
you haven't gotten rid of all
Some
of
of them
them.
decide they want to be dominant.
Right, right.
Other ones want to recede.
Yeah. Or they tell
Or
you.
disappear.
Yeah.
I want to paint out with oil on this now. It's basically just
The gesso canvas, it's
Yeah,
primed.
Exactly.
Primed and ready.
So now though, I'm using a warmer white. And now you see the difference? It's not a cold blue here.
Right.
But it's getting to be a warmer blue gray.
And I love that
And again,
creaminess, I love that
yeah.
color. Yeah.
So again, I didn't finish it really smoothly there because I want some of that blue to come through.
Mhm. Well, you could also pull it off. Do you ever pull off?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just a scumble kind of
Yeah.
rag, you just pull it off.
Yeah.
And that gives you something that you couldn't do by hand.
But even then, every one of these squares, they're not necessarily going to be flat. This
Yeah.
one now becomes lighter at this edge than it is down here.
Right.
And none
And
of this
harder edge there. than it
Exactly,
is
yeah,
here.
right.
Yeah.
And none of this is planned from the beginning. It's
Yeah. Well, how
whatever
it couldn't be? How could it
impossible.
be? I mean,
You could
now
do-
that I'm seeing all this, God, I could give you a big headache.
You'd have to do this again.
So 5 years later, here we are. Paul is finally finished with this piece. I'm only kidding. It just felt like 5 years, right, Paul?
5 years, yeah.
But it looks fabulous, and I know you're really in home stretch now.
I am in home stretch. It's almost done. There's a few more hours worth of work to do on here, but I don't think that the casual observer will see the difference unless you were to study this version versus the one that's going to be finished.
Well, it's been exciting to come in and see these stages as you've moved along, but as I look at it now, boy, these figures, I mean, at one point the figures weren't standing out quite as much at one stage, probably more in the sketch stage, but
Right.
now you're really seeing a difference between the figures and the background.
In the earlier stages, the figures didn't stand out so much from the background, and I liked it that way. I mean, it had a different quality to it, a different element, which I liked also. But it wasn't intended to be that way, and so it's evolved to this, where the figures stand out more from the background.
Well, as a casual observer, I liked it in several stages, and we had agreed, you could just stop here, you could stop here. And it's interesting how now there are more things going on, and I know you've got the architectural elements that I still think are pronounced, one going right up into the figure, which I think is great. You've got the planes, the stairs, there's a lot going
I've
on
got
in
a
that
lot of
background
A lot of different impossible perspectives, which I like.
that kind of reveal themselves, right?
Yeah, it's again, as we spoke about before, to tease the eye. I really love the idea of, I love perspective. It adds depth to a painting. But rather than being scientific about it, I like having multiple vanishing points and impossible perspectives.
So when you first started this, months ago, and you had the three figures in mind, and you knew that there would be some complexity to the background, did you think it would be this complex, or did you always have that in mind, or did it evolve also as you were working on it?
It's pretty much the way I envisioned it as far as complexity goes. I didn't know how it was going to work because it's been an evolution. The only things that were absolutely planned in this from the beginning were the location of the three figures.
Yeah.
None of the other detail was planned. It all happened as I was painting.
I think every painting is an evolution, especially a painting this size. This is a big one. Or a journey, however.
Yeah.
It's a journey emotionally, but an evolution.
Well, we talked about that at an earlier date. One of the things that fascinates me about doing a painting, any painting, but especially one this big, is that it really is an adventure. You don't know where it's going to lead. You might hope it's going to lead to a good place. You intend it to lead to a good place, but you don't know exactly what the road's going to be like. And that's the interesting part, the journey.
Well, it looks fabulous. I love it. I would love to see it in its final home at some point, wherever that might be, but it's been such a pleasure just kind of watching this process and learning. As an artist myself, I've learned watching this process and talking to you about it, because I've never been on the journey before, so thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you follow this from the beginning. It's the first time we've done this like this, and I've really enjoyed having you watch it in its progress.
Oh, thanks, Paul, and congratulations. It's a beauty.
Thanks very much.